911, what's your emergency?
I want to report a missing person, my little girl who's 6 years old. I believe she was abducted from our house.
I remember briefly waking up and hearing male voices outside my bedroom window.
To the person or persons who have Isabel, tell us your demands. Tell us what you want.
We have every hope that we will find Isabel alive and bring her back home to her family.
So many outlandish questions, so many theories, so many things that are just kind of getting out of hand, so to speak, in those terms. I think it is beneficial, in part, for the family to step out and perhaps clear up some of those questions.
We don't want the focus to be taken off Isabel.
Somebody out there someplace has information about this case, and it's that key piece of information that we're missing.
You're listening to a KOLD News 13 original podcast. I'm Bud Foster.
And I'm Shaley Sanders. This is Disappeared in the Desert. Tucson, Arizona, located in the southeastern part of the 48th state, the vast city has more than 1 million people in its metro area. Advertises having 350 days of sunshine and surrounded by mountain ranges, it's common to see people walking, cycling, and hiking outdoors at all times of the year. This city is known for having the best 23 miles of Mexican food in the country, but as the first American city selected as a United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization City of Gastronomy, you can find local restaurants serving a range of cuisines. While the greater metro area stretches more than 250 square miles, it feels very much like a small town. The community is always looking out for one another and knows how to come together in a time of need.
Let's go back to April 21st, 2012, a Saturday morning, seeing earlier than usual high temperatures, as many are just kicking off their weekend with a morning workout, maybe tackling errands, or breakfast around the television. The Sellis family is waking up to a nightmare.
911, what's your emergency?
I want to report a missing person, my little girl who's 6 years old. I believe she was abducted from our house.
That's the voice of Sergio Sellis, reporting the disappearance of his daughter, Isabel. It's 8:13 in the morning. Sergio told the 911 dispatcher that she was not in her bed when they woke up this morning.
Why do you think she was abducted?
I have no idea. We woke up this morning. I went to go get her up for her baseball game, and she's gone. I woke up my sons. We looked everywhere in the house, and my oldest son noticed that her window was wide open and the screen was laying in the backyard. We've looked all around the house.
As officers are dispatched to the East Side home, the dispatcher asks about who Sergio thinks would take his little girl.
Has she ever tried to sneak out of a window or anything?
Oh, no.
Have you guys been having any weird phone calls, anything like that, somebody hanging around?
No. We got home late from my son's baseball game, about 10:30 last night. Everyone took their showers, and they all went to bed. I even was in the living room watching the Diamondbacks game at midnight, and I fell asleep, and I never heard anything weird, so I was like just on the other side of the wall from her.
Several minutes later, Sergio's wife, Rebecca, arrives home from work. She ends up taking the phone from her son to talk to the dispatchers. She says Isabel had her hair in braided pigtails and made them last night before she went to bed. Isabel was last seen wearing an Old Navy shirt with an American flag and Navy shorts.
So who noticed her gone? Your husband?
My husband. I went to work this morning at 7, and I didn't even come and check on her. I should have come and checked on her.
Okay. All right, just take a deep breath, okay? I know it's hard.
7 minutes after the original call to police, officers arrived on the scene and started their investigation. I talked to Richard Harper, a retired Tucson Police Department captain. He worked on several missing person cases throughout his career. He did not work on the Isabel Sellis case, but gave us insight into the process of responding to those types of calls.
The very first place you start out when the calls from the parents and it's from the home is you search the home very thoroughly. And you not only do you do it, but you have one of your other officers do it right after you, so that you got 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 sets of eyes that are looking every place.
Officers did not find any sign of Isabel. They searched other locations where she may be, including the house of her grandfather, Sergio's father, neighbors' homes, and the park where the baseball game Isabel was supposed to be playing in is located. The Tucson Police Department shut down public access to the neighborhood. Officers were continuously on watch, questioning every car coming and going from the neighborhood, documenting their names, their license plates, and where they lived. Helicopters circled overhead. At first, officers focused on a specific radius around the Salas home, and here's why.
Most children are killed on average within about 200 to 300 feet of where they're abducted.
It wasn't just members of several southern Arizona law enforcement agencies searching for Isa. Community members rallied around the Salas family to help them find their little girl. Co-workers of her mother, Rebecca, organized volunteer search teams.
Not only does it hit home because it's in our community, but when it's somebody that you know personally.
It's pretty emotional. It's a coworker's daughter. I have a 6-year-old and a 5-year-old myself. And it's really emotional thinking that something like this can happen.
Weeks, months, even years pass by in Tucson without a sign if Isabel Salas is alive or dead. All the while, speculation spreads across the community on who could have been responsible for such a crime. Theories on if it was a stranger, a member of the Salas family, or someone the family knows that abducted Isabel. First, the biggest spotlight was on Isabel's father, Sergio Salas. Speculation began when people heard the call that he placed to 911. Take a listen.
Why do you think she was abducted?
I have no idea. We woke up this morning. I went to go get her up for her baseball game, and she's gone. I woke up my sons. We looked everywhere in the house, and my oldest son noticed that her window was wide open and the screen was laying in the backyard. We've looked all around the house.
Is Mom there also?
She had just left for work. I just called her, and I told her to get her butt home.
There are several things about that call which raised concern. Sergio immediately saying Isabel was abducted. An expert on nonverbal communication and detecting deception told KOLD News 13 at the time, pointed out that Sergio's use of that word.
If somebody is missing, would you initially jump to, they've been abducted? I think it would probably be, you'd probably say, I'm not sure what happened, and you wouldn't go straight to the abduction.
Let's learn a little bit more about Sergio Salas. All of this is based off of interviews and statements made to investigators and documented in public records. Family friends say Sergio is very well respected in the opera chorus and is a very good musician. That was a clip of Sergio singing at a concert held in honor of Isabel. Those same family friends say he had a little bit of an issue with drinking before Isabel was born, when he was struggling, wishing he had done more with his music. Rebecca described her husband to police as antisocial. She says he's not really antisocial, but he does his own thing. He's polite with her brothers, but that's about it.
His actions were criticized. In a 25-page report from one of Tucson's police detectives, it details Rebecca and Sergio went to a police station the day after Isabel's disappearance to speak with detectives. The officer wrote that Sergio asked him when it would be appropriate for them to get back to their normal life because their sons had baseball practice. While Rebecca was asked if they thought Isabel was alive, Sergio answered, "It has been over 24 hours, and that isn't good."
During a search of the Salas home, officers say they found writing on the door jamb of Isabel's closet. You may remember the family says she did not share a bedroom with anyone else. The writing appeared to be from a child. Some of the words include nothing, bad day, dad didn't, B-day, bad day, I don't like dad. Wording on the outside of the closet said, bad dad. These writings were brought up to Rebecca Salas during a polygraph test. She then started to cry and asked why Isabel never told her. She then wondered why the boys never told her, saying if she had known, she would have taken them away from there.
KOLD asked both Sergio and Rebecca their response to community members thinking they were behind Isabel's disappearance. Here's what they told us.
What do you say directly to the people who are assuming in some shape or form that you played a role in your daughter's disappearance?
Nothing. I mean, I really don't know what to answer to that, because other than you're wrong, and I can't say too much. Again, I'm afraid of saying anything as far as the investigative, but point blank, I guess that's the best answer I can come up with.
We don't have anything to hide, so
Nothing.
Go for it. Say what you want to say, but in the end, we are confident we had nothing to do with it, and go ahead, go for it. And the people who know us, who have known us as a family, know us and know that we have nothing to do with this.
Sergio and Rebecca told investigators their suspicions of a family member involved. They never said his name publicly, but we learned through public documents his name is Justin, and he's a cousin of Rebecca. At the time, the Sellises said the person had a troubled past and that they knew he had a key to their home because he used to live there for about a year. But police records gave us more insight about the family's suspicions and who Justin is. While living with the Sellises, Justin slept in Isabel's room, and she slept on a mattress in the parents' room due to nightmares. But then there was a falling out between Justin and Sergio. Sergio told police that Justin moved out of their home possibly in June of 2011 after the two had gone to Redington Pass in April. If you're not from the Tucson area, that road is a pass between the Catalina Mountains and the Rincon Mountains. That's part of the Coronado National Forest land. Sergio says while at Redington Pass, he got into an argument with Justin because they were drinking, and Justin left him in the desert. The Sellis family also says tension grew when Justin talked to reporters, including KOLD News 13, when Isabel disappeared.
She's your typical, real sweet, 6-year-old girl, 6 going on 7, runs around and plays with her friends and everything. Kind of sticks to her own, doesn't really talk to strangers. Just all trying to figure out what went wrong, how it happened, and what we need to do to get her back.
Then just days after her disappearance, Justin left Tucson, went back to Washington, and reportedly hired a lawyer. That's what a friend of Sergio told police in an interview. Why would he leave town so quickly?
It could be something as simple as not as protecting themselves from something else, or from actually something they're involved in, and just to find out, what they know, could either open or close that door, of us, going the right direction to find Isa, or knowing that door does not lead us anywhere and it'll let us go someplace different.
It's possible that it's not someone the family knows. According to a Reuters report, the FBI said from 2010 through 2017, the number of people under the age of 21 that have been abducted by strangers in the United States has ranged from a high of 384 in 2011 to a low of 303 in 2016. With no clear directional trend. Isabel's window was discovered open and the screen ripped off, which is a change from what the family noticed the night before. Sergio told officers that the window was closed when he went into Isa's room to tuck her in. The next-door neighbor, whose bedroom window is just feet away from Isabel's, told KOLD at the time she heard noises around 6 in the morning.
My dogs were going crazy. Their dogs were going nuts. And I remember briefly waking up and hearing male voices outside my bedroom window, but it was light outside. I didn't really think anything of it, and then I just went back to sleep, and then at 8 o'clock I got a knock on the door saying that she was missing. I don't think that they were police. I mean, I wasn't really paying attention. I was really tired, but I don't think it was.
We also have the shoe impressions documented in police reports by responding officers. They were discovered in the dirt just behind the Sellis home. The shoe marks were seen on top of an electrical box directly behind the house, and then in the dirt in the alleyway just south of the house. If it was a member of the family, especially someone who lived inside of the home, why would they need to stand on top of an electrical box behind the house?
For years, the disappearance of Isabel Sellis remained one of the largest unsolved cases in Arizona. Some developments in the case were announced throughout the years, like the release of the surveillance video around the Sellis home the night of Isabel's disappearance and additional searches through the Sellis neighborhood. But Isabel's location remained unknown. Then, on Friday, March 31st, 2017, the Tucson Police Department held a news conference. We're going to play part of it for you now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Magnus. I'm the chief of the Tucson Police Department. We've asked you all here today to give you an update on an investigation that is well known not only to the Tucson community, but frankly to communities across the country. In April of 2012, 6-year-old Isabel Sellis went missing from her East Side home. Now, earlier this month, human remains were uncovered from a remote area in Pima County. A portion of those remains were sent to an out-of-state lab. It's an independent lab for DNA analysis. And unfortunately, the results of this DNA analysis did confirm that the remains were those of Isabel Celis.
The Tucson Police Department did not release the location of the remains at the time, but we now know from the release of police documents on the investigation, Isabel Celis' remains were found near the streets of Trico Road and Avra Valley Road on March 3, 2017. 28 days before Chief Magnus announced the discovery. That's located northwest of Tucson on the border of Avra Valley and Picture Rocks neighborhoods, a rural area of Pima County as described by Chief Chris Magnus.
Still unidentified at the time of the autopsy, we learned that the remains are skeletal, including portions of the cranium, the right pelvis, and a vertebrae. The report says there were also some non-human bones accompanying the remains. The medical examiner's office requested to assist the Tucson Police Department on an additional and immediate search of where the remains were found. They all went back to the scene the same morning. That's when they found several bones.
The Office of the Medical Examiner determined on site that these additional finds were consistent in age and condition with the remains they previously examined that morning. But the medical examiner couldn't confirm if the remains were Isabel Celis. To do that, a tooth and several other skeletal elements were sent to testing at Bode Cellmark Forensics in Virginia. During the news conference, Chief Magnus explained why.
They are a nationally known and accredited lab, and they have the capability of performing different kinds of DNA analysis that our lab here in Tucson, as excellent as it is not capable of performing.
The official cause of death determined by the Pima County Medical Examiner, homicide by unspecified means. The manner of death, ruled homicide. While the discovery of Isabel Celis' remains brought some closure to the Tucson community, many questions remained. How did she die? When did it happen? And who killed her? One of the biggest questions of all, how did investigators find her remains? Since they were found in a remote part of Pima County, were officers looking specifically in that area? Or did someone else stumble upon them? Tucson Police Chief Chris Magnus remained tight-lipped about this question during the 2017 announcement about Isabel Celis, but did say this when pressed by reporters.
It was not a happenstance.
So it was the product of a focused search?
There has been an ongoing process of many different searches, and this was not happenstance.
So, not a coincidence. But that's all we knew for nearly a year and a half, until September 15th, 2018. In a room filled with cameras, despite it being a Saturday morning, Pima County Sheriff Mark Napier and Pima County Attorney Barbara Lawal sat side by side as Tucson Police Chief Chris Magnus made this announcement.
In early 2017, local FBI agents were contacted about an individual by the name of Christopher Clements. They were advised that Clements possibly had information relating to the disappearance of Isabel Celis.
Police documents, now public, reveal more about the initial contact that ended up being the break in the case investigators were looking for.
On February 8, 2017, less than a month before search crews found Isabel's remains, a woman by the name of Melissa contacted the FBI. She told agents her fiancé, Christopher Clements, knew the location of Isabel Celis. It was easy for them to track down Clements since he was currently in the Pima County Jail facing burglary charges. For the first time, we're hearing these interactions. They're exhibits in the case and were available via public records laws. It gives us a better idea of the tone and the rapport Clements had with law enforcement. In head-to-toe orange, Christopher Clements sat in a small circular table in an intimate room at the Pima County Jail. Across from him are two FBI special agents.
So you probably know why we're here. We talked to your girlfriend, I guess, Melissa? Fiance, right? And so anytime anybody makes a claim, like they have information, like she said, we're gonna check it out, and I want to see if
I'm glad you guys have
there's
done more
anything to it.
than anybody else.
Well, good. I mean, we helped a lot in that investigation. I know all the details. I mean, if you've got something that shed some light on that, I'd love to hear it.
Well, I mean, I'm not doing this to be a good Samaritan. I'll be
Clements wants to negotiate a deal with law enforcement. In exchange for leading investigators to where Isabel Salas is, he wants the pending Pima County burglary charges against him dismissed, his Acura, which was seized, returned, and full immunity for any charges related to the Isabel Salas case. Agents told Clements they couldn't guarantee an agreement like that, but they would do the best they could in contacting the Pima County Attorney's Office, but they needed some information to entice the prosecutor to offer a deal.
If he gave us where she's at, would we be able to go and scoop her up this afternoon? Could we do that? Is that possible?
With the information that I have, yes.
Right.
You could. Absolutely. Without a doubt. You could. Yeah.
All right.
You could have her within 12 hours.
12 hours? It would take us that long?
I said within 12 hours.
On March 3, 2017, Christopher Clements led investigators to what we now know are the remains of Isabel Salas. We have the transcript of the drive, but not the audio like previous meetings with law enforcement. Clements and investigators drove around the area of Trico Road and Avra Valley Road for a while, as Clements tried to remember where the exact location was. Eventually, investigators found the spot, but took Clements back to the jail without confirming to him that they'd made the discovery. The Pima County Attorney's Office upheld its end of the deal and dropped the burglary charges and released Clements' car from forfeiture. This did not mean Clements was a free man, however, able to walk out of the jail like he had hoped. Instead, he was transferred to the Maricopa County Jail, where he was facing charges in connection to a separate burglary.
Investigators began digging more into Clements' past and his possible involvement in Isabel's death, since he knew the location of her remains. Several search warrants were executed, including in the yard of a home Clements and his fiancée lived in previously. A shocking discovery was made. In one of the corners of the fenced backyard, investigators found a sheet of plywood on the ground. Under that plywood, a Tupperware bin. Under that, officers documented finding a number of items, including a faded purple hooded child's sweatshirt. There was also apparent schoolwork for a young child with the name Mercedes written on it, and ashes. Isabel's middle name is Mercedes. Detectives also received access to items recovered in a search warrant by Maricopa County in reference to the burglary case there. On computers and media storage devices, they found photos of young girls believed to be between the ages of 3 and 13 in sexual manners. Internet search history was also available on the computer. Here's a list of some of the items searched. Isabel Salas, more than 2 years before her remains were discovered. Isabel Salas sexy. Child killer found not guilty. And Arizona cold cases.
The new evidence and information, in conjunction with the details and evidence from the initial investigation, was presented to the Pima County Attorney's Office and then to the Pima County Grand Jury. On Friday, September 14th, 36-year-old Christopher Matthew Clements was indicted on multiple felony charges.
On March 3, 2017, Christopher Matthew Clements led FBI agents and other members of law enforcement to the site of Isabel Salas' remains. Clements told the agents he remembered a landmark that would help them locate Salas' remains. The landmark? A stack of tires, which immediately raised red flags because a few years prior, authorities had discovered the body of a Tucson teenager near that very stack of tires. Her name, Maribel Gonzalez.
At the time of the discovery on June 6, 2014, investigators did not know who that girl was or what happened. In hopes of identifying her, deputies released information about Jane Doe, specifically a photo of a tattoo she had on her collarbone and a photo of the anchor necklace she was wearing.
We have the autopsy report of Maribel, conducted by the Pima County Medical Examiner's Office on June 9th at 10 in the morning at the Forensic Science Center on the south side of Tucson. Her cause of death was determined to be homicide by unspecified means because of how advanced the body was decomposing. The manner of death? Homicide. Maribel's mother, Valerie, said she saw Maribel for the last time the night before, on June 2nd, the night before she went missing. A friend of Maribel, named Thomas, told Pima County detectives the last time he heard from Maribel, she told him she was going to come see him at his apartment, but she never showed up. Detectives document from the interview with Thomas that he insisted he thought Maribel was 18 years old, but they never had any type of physical or sexual relationship with her.
Maribel Gonzalez was 5 feet tall, 91 pounds, and had brown hair. As mentioned before, she had a butterfly tattoo on her collarbone. Family shared more on the type of person she was to KOLD throughout the years. Her father.
One should be around families, and all of the families should be trying to make everybody laugh. And she was always she trusted too many people. She was a good, she thought everybody was her friend, and I would tell her sometimes, not everybody's friendly, so you gotta be careful.
Her brother.
Dealing with her loss is a very hard thing for me because that was one of the closest people to me.
When Isabel's remains were found in the same area as Maribel, Tucson Police Chief Chris Magnus said the investigation expanded.
After learning Isabel and Maribel were located in close proximity to one another, the Tucson Police Homicide Unit and Pima County Sheriff's Homicide Unit began working together on the two cases. Detectives were able to obtain additional information about both homicides and recover additional pieces of evidence during this joint investigation.
On March 30th, 2017, the same day Isabel Celis' remains were identified, a detective showed Valerie a lineup of photos at her home. A photo of Christopher Clements was included. At that time, he was a level 3 sex offender who used to live in the same area of town as Maribel. It was documented that she did not pick out the image of Clements.
In connection to a burglary case in Maricopa County, police obtained letters that Christopher Clements wrote to his fiancée. We have a copy of these letters, some of them redacted. Several pages had red spots on them, which were later confirmed to be Clements' blood. In these letters, he discussed Maribel Gonzalez and Isabel Celis. A report on the case from the Pima County Sheriff's Department stated a detective revisited the physical evidence on file and noticed a few things not tested by the DNA lab: left and right-hand clippings, hand swabs, and body hair pulls and combings. Those samples were then sent to DNA Labs International the next day. 2 months later, an analyst contacted investigators to alert them that little male DNA was detected in the hair combings but could be used to develop a partial profile. Clements' DNA obtained from the search warrant was tested against the partial profile of DNA found on Maribel, and it matched.
Now that we've told you about both murder cases, here's an overview of all of the charges against Christopher Clements, laid out in the indictment filed on September 14th, 2018. 22 total. 2 first-degree murder charges, 2 kidnapping of a minor under 15, 2 burglary in the second degree, 1 theft of property or services, 1 trafficking in stolen property, and 14 charges of sexual exploitation of a minor, a dangerous crime against children. Chief Magnus and Pima County Attorney Barbara Lawal both stated Clements is innocent until proven guilty. Clements has pleaded not guilty. We reached out to Clements' lawyer for this podcast and did not hear back.
On September 24, 2018, Christopher Matthew Clements was arraigned in the Pima County Superior Court for the charges against him. The judge set a $2 million all-cash bond in order to be released after he pleaded not guilty. In October 2020, Clements' lawyers filed a motion to separate the 22 charges into separate trials. In the filing, we also learned that Clements wanted to testify in the trial of Isabel Celis' death, but not in the trial of Maribel Gonzalez' death. Having the trials separate would mean he could not be cross-examined about Maribel Gonzalez during the Isabel Celis trial. The court agreed to the motion, which is now why Christopher Clements will have 2 trials. The trial of Maribel Gonzalez was scheduled for January 11, 2022, and then Isabel Celis for February 22nd. But just a few weeks ago, they were rescheduled. Now, the trial of Maribel Gonzalez's death is scheduled to start April 19, 2022. It could last up to 12 days. For Isabel Celis' death, the trial is now scheduled for May 24, 2022, and could last for 14 days. When those trials take place, we're planning to follow the trial closely for you, with weekly updates from inside the courtroom from juror selection to verdict. Disappeared in the Desert is a KOLD News 13 original podcast, hosted by Shaley Sanders and Bud Foster. Special thanks to our editor, Jesse Zoller, writer and executive producer, Colleen Menadir, digital content producer, Mia Courtright, and executive producer of Daily Content, Michael Cooper. For more information about this case, visit KOLD.com.